Okay, we're live. Hi, David. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing pretty well.
You traveling last week? Anything you can share?
Pardon me?
You were traveling?
Oh, yeah, I was in Mexico with my youngest, and
Nice.
so
Where'd
it's
you
a
go?
fun outing for spring break. Somewhere on the Mexican Riviera coast there in the Yucatan.
Nice. Any ruins? Tulum or Chichen Itza or
No,
no?
unfortunately, no ruins. Chichen Itza is great to see. I've been
Yeah.
there a couple of times.
Yeah, and it's getting near the spring equinox when it does that stake thing that goes down the pyramid. Have you ever seen that?
No,
Yeah, that's pretty.
but back in the day when we visited it, you could still climb the stairs on the
Oh,
big
cool.
ziggurat or whatever it's called, pyramid,
Yeah.
and that was cool, very dramatic.
Well, we got some people coming into the chat. So if you're coming in the chat and you want to look at anything specific in Darrington Press's Daggerheart, let me know. I'm going to pull it up now. That is not it. Daggerheart. There we go. Okay, so here's the Daggerheart open beta playtest that just came out today. I really had no idea what this would look like, and so I'm kind of jumping in. But I did have a little bit of time to look at it over lunch and just after work. So let's look at what they say
Yeah,
Daggerheart
that's my
is
favorite page right there so far, not
in their own
having dipped
words.
very far in there. The description on page 10 of what kind of game they're aiming to get.
All right, let's start here with
um,
7, which might be 10 in actual. Uh, No, it looks like it's based on so heroic, narrative-focused experience with combat as a prominent aspect of play, player-driven campaigns, exciting battles, harrowing challenges. Rules light. I kind of chuckled at that a little bit because the rules don't look that light.
No, they're
No,
kind of intricate. It is
yeah,
not
they
a
are.
freewheeling flip a coin and see what happens kind of game.
Yeah. When I think of rules light, I think of like Shadow Dark, where it's like, okay, you want to do an action, roll d20, add your modifier, check the DC. But this has got a lot of nuances in it. Free flowing approach to combat. This is weird and interesting. So we'll take a look at that a little bit. Doesn't rely on grid based movement for the maps and minis. We'll look at that a little bit. And you were saying page 10, right, David?
Yeah, that's right. The player principles.
Okay. Let's look
And
at that.
there's interesting things for me here trying to decide whether this is the sort of games that's for me or sort of games, other people can be a fan of. It can be their favorite game, but maybe isn't the right fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff in here that say, yes, this is something I'm eager to play, and play to find out what happens is something I generally like to see in a game. I like to have a sort of some third force of the dice or whatever, try deciding what the outcome is rather than just a pure storytelling narrative. And so there was.
Yeah, I was kind of a little bit surprised to see that. It didn't feel like that was very much how like Candela Obscura was. It doesn't feel like that's very much how this one is with regard to how they describe it campaigns. So we'll look at that in a little bit. But let's go back here to um, looking at Touchstone. So they're giving credit to like everyone, which really every game nowadays is stealing stuff from every other game nowadays. There's so much stuff out there. It's hard to come up with your own unique ideas. And it's nice that they're shouting out to basically everyone.
This speaks to me about how creative the RPG field is now. And just if you're looking for a golden age, here's something that's pointing to the golden age, because a lot of these games are very recent, or from my perspective, and they've got a lot of cool ideas that they're bringing into the field. So that really speaks well to how much new ideas are still coming into role-playing gaming even after 50 years of this hobby.
I'm going to pull up a character. They come with character resources that you can download. So I'm going to pull up a character resource for, let's just do Rogue, for example. Pull that up, and you get this in the packet, this Daggerheart Rogue class package, and it pretty much has everything you need in it if you're a player. So you got all the steps for character creation, and then they have some neat little things where you can kind of just circle one thing in each box to quickly get some unique names to the setting, unique odds to the setting, family names to the setting, etc. So that's pretty cool. And then we come down here and we look at the 6, they call them traits. And you do these 6 traits. Let's see, it's on page 23 here. My page number thing. There we go. So you assign values to the character traits. So using the modifiers, which I think Pathfinder does now. I think MCDM is doing that. Shadow Dark, you still roll the 3 to 18, but you end up with a modifier. In D&D, you end up with a modifier. So everyone's coming with modifiers. Got a comment here from Chief Matt 1. Artwork on the character resources look great. Yeah, so I look at the character resources and scroll down here to the cards. It does look really good. So it kind of walks you through making your character, and you have your character sheet here, and one of the first steps is you do your traits. And so the traits are +2, +1, +1. I'm sorry, 2 +1s, a -1, and 2 zeros. So it's not as broad a range as some games. And interestingly, it's a 2d12 mechanic, so it's going to have more of a bell curve on checks for the players, at least the DM is still a d20. And so traits will have bigger bang for the buck, and experience will have bigger bang for the buck. Like if you look at what's the average roll in, say, a starting level D&D character, you have, give them benefit of the doubt, give them an 11. It's 10.5 really on a d20, but say they rolled an 11. And then they have +3 for the primary ability score and +2 for proficiency. So your average roll on making a check you're good at is a 16. In this system, 2d12 averages is a 13, and then a +2 on your best score is 15. So it's real comparable on like the DCs. If you're DM trying to figure out DCs, it seems like it'd be pretty comparable.
Did you get a sense with the traits that there's a right set of traits to pick for a certain character class?
Well, let's see.
Or is it something that would, maybe just allow you to customize a particular character class to
I
have
feel like
different
there's a lot of
talents?
variety. So you have, like for the rogue, they're suggesting you put the +2 in finesse, and they're suggesting your primary weapon is a dagger, which uses finesse. But if you look at their equipment section for each player character, they have like these list of different weapons, and they use different traits. So if you wanted to be a finesse fighter, you'd want to pick up a dagger. If you wanted to be an instinct fighter, like I guess a monk or, well, that's the only one I think I see. So a quarterstaff. If you wanted to be strength fighter, it'd be a mace, greatsword, warhammer, etc. So pretty interesting wrinkle there. It's like the trait to attack is with the weapon, not with the class. Like in D&D, it's with the class, right?
Yeah.
Your warlock's using charisma, your rogue's using dexterity, etc. Yeah.
Interesting.
So then, next thing, let's look at the overall the dice mechanic, and they kind of tell you that on page 9. So I'll go back to the playtest book, and on page 9, the heart of the game. So the dice players use in Daggerheart are generally 2d20 or 2d12 for their quote duality dice. And so that's like a range from anywhere from 2 to 24 in a roll, and bell curving around 13 on average. And when you make a check, you roll both of them, you add them both together, you add your trait, and if you have any experience, your experience compared to the difficulty check. And then you also determine which of the 2 dice rolled higher, and one's your hope die and one's your fear die. And they have various mechanics that those 2 dice do. So you'll tell the DM, hey, I got a 20 with hope or a 20 with fear. And there's a lot of nuance in the game. It's not simple. There's lots of nuance on how you use those things.
Right,
then
and if your hope and your fear are a tie, that's a crit. So
right,
you're either going to get hope, fear, or a crit
yeah,
with your outcome.
and the crit comes with hope automatically, and I think it reduces 1 stress. Maybe I'd have to double check that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. Okay, so that's your basic dice mechanic there. We covered traits. Let's look at a sample character that's all filled out. That's on page 30 here. So here's a sorcerer filled out. You have evasion, which is basically like you would think in D&D, your armor class. That's the number of monster needs to roll to hit you. And monsters are rolling on a d20. And I looked at a few of them, and like they're generally pretty low modifiers to start for the low tier monsters. So they're probably rolling at +1 to +3 on the d20. And if they hit you, then they'll roll their damage. And you can try to absorb some of that into your armor. So if say they roll 20 points of damage against this sorcerer, he could say, well, I'm going to take some of that into the breastplate I'm wearing or whatever this armor is. Yeah, breastplate armor. They can check this box off and knock that 20 down to a 15 damage. They can absorb 2, check it off again, knock it down to a 10 damage, and then check it off again, knock it all the way down to a 5 damage. But once you've checked those all off, you're basically stuck until you do a rest. So you want to be judicious in how you spend those. And then you're going to compare the damage the monster does to your thresholds. So that guy that rolled a 20 would be severe damage if you didn't absorb any of it into your armor, and you'd mark off 3 hit points. If it's 8 to 12, you'd mark off 2. If it's 3 to 7, you'd mark off 1. If it's 1 to 2, you mark off a stress. And if you marked all your stresses off, then you mark off a hit point. So that feels like it could get pretty hairy pretty fast. I think we'd have to play test a little bit. I definitely want to do a play test of this to see
I
how it
am
runs.
fascinated by that damage mechanic with the thresholds and the number of hit points. It keeps the hit points levels low, and then most of whether you get harmed by the damage is dependent on that damage roll,
Yep.
whether it exceeds your threshold. Did you get a look at what sort of damage rolls these monsters are doing?
Yeah. If we come over here to part 4, and let's look at like the tier 0 adversaries. So jagged knife bandits. I think of these as maybe goblins or kobolds or such. They're not called that, but they're kind of generic. So a standard bandit is doing 2d8 damage. So on average 9, you compare that to the sorcerer, which their threshold I think was 8 for it to do 2 hits to them. So it could get hairy really fast. They're rolling a d20 +0 against the sorcerer's 9 evasion. And if they get a 9 or more, they hit, I believe. And then they roll 2d8. And if they roll a 5 or higher, I think it was 3 or higher, they're past the first threshold number and doing hit points damage. So yeah.
I'm really eager to see how this feels in play.
Yeah, what the balance is like in it. So let's see, that was that. Let's go back to that sample character on page 30. Okay. So you got your thresholds. You have your weapon. There wasn't really like, you get gold pieces to spend. It was more you pick this stuff from the character, and for example, the rogue.
We've seen a couple of games recently that just kind of make equipment not a spending activity, but just a choosing activity.
Right.
And it's
So
kind of
this,
like that in D&D now, because you get enough money for everything but plate armor early on.
yeah. Yeah, so you got, they suggest a primary weapon, suggest a secondary weapon, suggest an armor. You take inventory, which has handful, quote, of gold. We'll look at that in a minute. Choose between a potion or healing or stamina, and then, forgery tools or grappling hook. And so you're starting primary weapons here, starting primary weapons magic. So I don't know when you get to pick magic versus physical. I guess magic does magic damage. Yeah, it does. I don't know if that is different. Like if it ignores armor or if it does something different. So I haven't read that part yet. If anyone knows in the chat, throw that in the chat for us. That'd be awesome. then your secondary weapon, and your armor. And it's like you can pick any armor you want, but they
Yeah.
balance the armor with a like leather is light, so your evasion goes up by 1, but your armor score is low. This character had breastplate, so they have a 5. And again, that's how much damage you reduce to compare to your thresholds. Chainmail, you get
It's
7,
effectively an increase to your hit points. Am I
kinda.
reading that right?
Yeah,
Because
if you
you're
choose to absorb.
notching
Yeah,
it off.
yeah. And then full plate, -2 to evasion, -1 to your ability score or your agility score, and 9 armor. So that is looking at the rogue. And if we come back here, so dual staff for the sorcerer, using instinct, which I think is equivalent to wisdom, interestingly.
Makes sense.
Sorcerers using wisdom. Um, there's your damage. So a player would roll, and the player's rolling 2d12, going to add their instinct of 2, and I believe that's it. And sorcerer with breastplate was surprising. Casters can wear any armor. It appears, at least this one does. Well, I don't know for sure. The rogue class could wear any, so maybe anyone can wear any. We'll see. Good question. Okay, so then I was looking at how you attack. So he's attacking with his dual staff, rolling 2d12, adding 2 to it, getting an average roll of 14, 13, 14, 15. Attacking, say, a tier 0 adversary, a jagged knife wielder. They have a difficulty, so that's like their armor class or their evasion rolled together because they don't really have armor. So you're trying to roll 2d12 and get a 12 or higher. Then you roll your damage of 1d8 plus 2. So say you get 7. Then the minor threshold for this goblin, if it is 2. So you did 1 hit point to it.
Feels like there's a fair amount of complexity there for
a little bit.
a mook,
Yeah, not too simple. Okay. Back to the sample character on page 30. So then we come down here, you got your armor, inventory, minor stamina potion, clears 1d4 stress. You have a total of 5 stress. And you use stress, you use hope, you use all these different resources to cast spells. So that can be important. And of course, if you take only like 1 or 2 damage, then it marks off a stress, not a hit point. But if you're all out of stress, then it starts marking off hit points. Arcane Sense, Minor Illusion, Channel Raw Power. There's an example of them going through and circling the things for their character. They have some kind of neat background questions and connections. This is all, purely optional, but it's neat that it gives you background for your character and intertwines the characters in the party together. So why do we keep our shared past a secret? What did I do that makes you wary of me? Why do you trust me so deeply? Examples like that. Then, as you gain experience and you level, or as you level, because experience means something different. Like you gain level 2. At level 2, you get additional experience, which is like a skill. And you get to pick 2 of these things below. So you can add a hit point slot, add a stress slot, increase 2 unmarked character traits by 1, and then mark them. So if you're looking at your character traits, they have this circle up here. And so if you got to level 2, you could increase your instinct to +3 and mark it. And something else like presence to +2 and mark it. Then that mark means you can't update it anymore. So in the first tier, you can only raise it by 1. Got a question from Nicholas. Hi, Nick. They might want to revise that rules-like claim. Yeah. Is this a Critical Role game from Greg Cherry? Yes, it is. Yeah, we're checking out the Critical Role game. It actually looks pretty interesting. I definitely want to try it. Okay, so then I was looking at leveling up. You can increase your abilities, increase your hit points, increase your stress, increase 2 proficiencies by 1. Oh, but there's also a proficiency, which is your weapon proficiencies. Add an armor slot or take +1 to your evasion. So you notice that there was 3 armor slots, which means in between rests, you can absorb damage 3 times with your armor. But you can increase that as you go up in levels. Or you can increase your evasion by 1 with that addition. So that's the character. Any questions there, or anyone want to look at anything there? Next, we're going to look at hope and fear on page 98. Okay, so your roll is 2d12, and you've got one identified as your hope die, one identified as your fear die. And whichever one rolls higher, you get hope or fear. And if you get a crit, you get hope and clear stress. And then you can use that hope. It's kind of like advantage in a number of ways. You can have up to 5 at a time, and you can help an ally with it, utilize an experience with it, or activate a hope feature with it. Like a lot of class features, say spend a hope and do this thing. We'll look at one of those in a minute here. Helping an ally gives advantage or disadvantage, and advantage and disadvantage is giving you an extra d6 on a roll, as far as I can tell. And they also offset, but they stack up. So if you had 2 advantages and 1 disadvantage, you'd end up with 1 advantage, unlike D&D, unlike 5th edition. Question from Nick: did this playtest come with an adventure or scenario of some kind? It does, I think at least in the Nexus.
There was a 3-hour starter adventure packaged with this that I didn't look at. I'm hoping Tom runs it.
I will run it. I'm definitely going to try it.
But it says that the adventure is a good place to start because it will guide you through some of these rules to get you going.
I'll have to take a look. Maybe I'll take a look at that in another video here. Still can't believe you haven't done a video on Legends of the Mist RPG. I'll have to take a look. Just did 850,000 on the Kickstarter. Nice, Legends. Chief Matt, looks like they use a standard stat array. Yep. Would love to see more variability. So like I was saying, with the bell curve, Matt, they kind of get more bang for their buck with modifiers than you do with a linear curve like a straight D20 roll. So it might have made it too powerful with their playtesting. I don't know if that'd be interesting to see if it's changed over time with playtesting, or if it changes again after we all playtest it. Okay, so you got hope, and then fear. We'll get into kind of what fear does in a minute when we start talking about combat. But let's look at damage. So we talked about damage a little bit on the character sheet we're looking at, and this kind of basically says the same thing. When you're below minor, it's stress, then 1, 2, or 3 hit points marked off after that. And there is an optional rule where you can say at double severe, it's 4 hit points. So if you want to play up, you can do that. Got all the same stuff there. Death saving throws death we'll get to in a minute. Looks pretty cool. And downtime, we'll look at how downtime gives you hit points back. Here's the double damage. And you can take downtime to get stress back too. So now, if we look at evasion on page, so evasion is just how hard it is to hit you. We talked about advantage already. 2 sources, so they don't cancel. They cancel 1 for 1, not all for all. Then if we go to range, okay, so we're getting kind of more into the combat area here. We're going to talk about how they do range. So it's a little bit like Shadow Dark and some other games that I've seen lately where they do range in like increments. So melee is adjacent. Very close is like melee with range up to 10 feet away. Close is up to 30 feet away. Far is up to 100 feet away. And very far, 300 feet away. And they have ways you can do this if you're playing on a table with no grid, where you can use like the edge of a card, the short edge of a card, a standard pen or pencil. This one's off. A standard piece of paper would only be 50 feet, which is only half of that range. So 2 pieces of paper would give you 100 feet. And then beyond that would be very far range.
Right. This is sort of an abstract map kind of combat layout that's enabling everyone to have a sense of where things are and do that without having a lot of people counting squares and worrying about diagonal movement and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a pretty good compromise for me, who likes to have a good visualization that everybody shares of the relative position of people in the fight without the potential of getting bogged down in counting squares, something that a lot of folks really bridle against.
Yep. Okay, so then movement, like you're saying. Oh, don't have to get bogged down in counting squares. Page 115. Okay, so you can always move to a location that's within your close range, so 30 feet, range of 6 squares, and do your action, whatever that might be. If you this is a weird one. If you simply want to move to another spot on the map while danger is present, or if you're trying to move to a location that's far or very far away from you, you have to make an agility roll. So they kind of take away the ability to do a double close move without having to make an agility roll. And maybe that's to, indicate that it's dangerous to run through a combat, maybe. But adversaries, the GM can move to a location within their close range and still act. So you can basically move anywhere in the battlefield with a high enough agility roll. Is how that works. And because combat is kind of abstract as with regard to time, which we'll look at in a minute, I guess that kind of makes sense that that's a possibility. You don't actually have rounds in this game, which is interesting. All right. So now we're going to get into the abstract gold. This is on page 116. So gold is measured in handfuls, bags, chests, hoards, and fortunes. And I would assume you can buy stuff later in the game, that has value of this. 6 handfuls equal 1 bag, 5 bags equals 1 chest, 4 chests equals 1 hoard, 3 hoards equals
Perfect
1
for the
fortune,
math-averse.
or just use numbers. You could also do that. I don't know why they do that, but if you look on the character sheet, they have built in on the character sheet. Let's see, that'd be up from here. Yeah, you have your gold tally right there.
No. Okay. Simple. Is there encumbrance too when you're carrying your gold?
Good question. I don't know about encumbrance. If anyone knows about encumbrance, list that in the chat. We'll come back to that. Because next after gold is short and long rests. So these look very 5e in duration. We have a short rest, which is about an hour. So here's the interesting thing. So character building is kind of like D&D, that every character has what are they called? Not special powers, but every character has class features. And you basically have a pool of class features that you can choose from, and you can change it every day. So any fighter could do anything a 5e fighter of any, class, subclass could do, depending on the day. They could change out what they're doing. Then you can also clear 1 to 4 hit points, clear 1 to 4 stress, repair 2 marked armor slots, gain a hope. And then a long rest gives you 2 of the following: all hit points, all stress, all armor slots, prepare alone to gain a hope, or prepare with others to gain 2 hope each, and then work on a project.
To me, the most interesting part of these downtime rules are those phrases at the beginning of each of the lines that say, describe how you. To me, that really kind of captures the feel that maybe Critical Role is trying to capture, where you narrate what's going on and use downtime as an opportunity to reestablish the connections between the characters and sort of have interactions between the characters that develop their personality and their relationships. So it's sort of trying to turn it into a storytelling mechanism.
Yeah, definitely. And they do that a lot in Critical Role. They really focus in on the rests. Okay, death. Let's look at death. So you use up your last hit point, and you only got 5 or 6 of them, so it could come pretty quick, possibly. You can embrace death and go out in a blaze of glory. You get 1 action, which is automatically a critical success, and then you die. You could avoid death and face the consequences, and so basically you go unconscious. Help the DM describe how the situation gets much worse, then roll your fear die. If it's equal to or lower than your level, you take a scar. When you have any number of your marked hit points cleared by an ally or in your party's next long rest, you return. And then risk it all. Roll both your dice. If hope is higher, you stay on your feet and clear a number of hit points and stress equal to the value of the hope die. dividing up how you want. And that could be a lot. So if you roll an average roll of a 6, you don't have a whole lot of hit points. You're going to get a lot of hit points and stamina back. If your fear die is higher, you cross through the veil of death. And if they're tied, you stay on your feet and you clear all hit points and stress. So that's 1 out of 12 chance. You have a chance, 1 out of 12 chance of critting on anything you do in this game.
One of the most appealing things about some of the games we've seen lately, MCDM role-playing game, and this is how exciting they make dying potentially by offering storytelling options or risk-taking options or other things that really give the characters or the players a chance to tell their own character's story without making the game completely toothless. There are downsides, so you want to avoid this. But if it comes to that, it opens up some really interesting options for you.
Yeah, this was refreshing to see because it really, I mean, you have the option to avoid death, right? But it throws out there, hey, you can die and go out in a blaze of glory. You can risk everything and die, highly likely, which is, I wasn't quite expecting that. I felt it to be more soft and not as sharp toothed, like you said, to the players.
Well,
But
yeah, you're supposed to get complications if you just shrug off the
take a scar and whatever the scars might be.
presumably a storytelling setback.
Cross off one of your hope. Oh wow, you lose one of your hope slots permanently. That's so yeah, you couldn't do it very many times. Otherwise, you have no hope left.
Start with 5 maximum hope, if I remember correctly. So you'd be down
I
to
don't
4.
think it ever goes up.
That would be an interesting consequence.
That is interesting.
And then you can have your grizzled hero who's down to last shred of hope with 1 slot after facing death so many times. I love it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, combat. So this is very interesting. No initiative, no rounds, no distinct number of actions you can take on your turn, which just feels like, oh, that's just random and whoever yells the loudest is going to go. So the DM should adjudicate that and kind of keep it moving and give everyone opportunities, I would think. But whenever there's a combat that's likely to last more than a roll or two, you put an action tracker out. Just a box that you can put tokens in or a card you can put tokens on. And whenever a PC takes an action, they put a token there. And they don't have any limit on tokens. They can have as many tokens as they want. And you should, as the DM, help, spread out the actions so one person's not taking them all. But if they ever miss or roll with fear, I think, which is going to be half the time, then the GM gets a turn. So on average, it'll go player, GM, player, GM, player, GM. Or maybe 2 players, GM, 2 players, GM. But then the GM gets to take all those action tokens that are there and use them on his monsters.
Interesting.
It's an interesting mechanic. It's pretty. I don't like the freeformness of it because I don't want, a quiet player who's shy to not get in the action. But as a DM, I'd just make sure they would. I'd just make sure it's spread pretty even. But it gives the party the opportunity to put plans in action about what order they go in. So that kind of makes sense.
One of the things that's interesting to me about the tokens is I haven't seen a lot of games that suggest using physical items and game pieces and stuff like that in a role-playing game. And I think that's a great idea to actually suggest standard ways of using tokens or other objects to keep track of the game and in the game state instead of kind of being loosey-goosey and recommending, just freewheel it however feels right to you.
Right. Yeah. Activating adversaries. When the GM goes, they choose spending number of the tokens currently on the action tracker. For each one they spend, they activate an adversary. Recommends not doing the same adversary multiple times. But I don't think there's a rule against it necessarily. So there's that. And then that's flow of combat. Now let's look at the DM attack. I can go all the way down to page 182 for this. So when an adversary, the DM's controlling, attacks PC, you take a number of extra character tokens equal to their attack bonus, and like I said, they're like 1 to 3 or 0 to 3, and roll them with the d20. I don't know why they say roll them, because they're just all +1s. Then add everything up, and you get your attack roll total. And then if that beats the player's evasion, then you hit, and you go and do the damage. And there might be other things that they could do. There's probably plenty of powers they can use to avoid it. You can always add advantage to an adversary's attack roll by spending fear. So that's one way you can spend fear. So like I said, if a player rolls with fear, you get to take your turn. You can spend fear in order to do other things. And then next one we got is difficulty. So setting difficulty for things. So like I said, an average roll is about a 15. So if it's medium difficulty, then there should be a 50-50 chance of failure by someone fairly proficient. It's a 15. And then it can go, down to 5, up to 30. So this feels very 5e level type levels. And like I said, it's a 2 to 24 roll, but the modifiers are slightly lower. All right. Now, let's take a look at some of the other stuff in the package. So you have in part 4, running a campaign. Let's see, what's part 3? Running an adventure. And I don't know if the core... Yeah, I don't think the adventure's in here. I think it's separate. So I'll grab
it's a
that.
separate PDF.
Yeah. All right, so
Do
part
you
4,
want
running
to
a
talk
campaign.
about, Tom, just a bit about fear and complications?
Yeah,
or do you want to come back to that later?
let's talk about it. What page are you thinking, or section? Or we
It
can look
might
at
be
character
under
sheets.
running a campaign.
Might be, yeah. We can also look at the character progression here a little bit. They got the short rest, long rest. No fear or complications in there.
Right. Well, what I saw was, hope is a resource. When you get the hope outcome of one of your checks, then that's a resource that you can use to power up your character in certain maneuvers or cooperate or think good things like that. Fear is something that goes to the DM as a resource that the DM gets to use, but also when a DM gets a fear outcome, they get an opportunity to make a complication to make the player's lot just a little bit more difficult. And I haven't gone far enough to see whether the game outlines what sort of complications might be brought by a fear outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So I always worry about games that task the DM with coming up with complications on the fly as the game goes, because it seems like it's writing a check that the DM has to cash. Have you refed any games with that kind of system?
Not where I had to repeatedly come up with complications. No. I
Yeah, so
imagine that'd get hard pretty quick.
it feels like it would get hard, but maybe there's a pretty limited menu of things that are suggested, and that would be something I'd be interested in. Another thing that's interesting to me is when a game goes into storytelling, I'm always interested in, a key part of story is to make things hard for the characters, to come up with obstacles in their way. And with a game like D&D, it feels like the game system has slowly evolved away from let me put it this way. It slowly evolved towards intensely favoring the characters succeeding and succeeding almost all the time, which is it can be fun for a certain way to get excited by how great your character is, but it also isn't a great way to make compelling stories at the table because everybody's always doing pretty well. So I'm always interested. I always like to see a game that kind of works in complications and setbacks into the system. So that's part of good, compelling stories.
Yeah. So I pulled up the page here where they say what you can spend fear on. Do something big, take a countdown. So various powers have countdowns. Use an adversary's fear move, so special monsters might have fear moves. Take advantage on a roll, in an effect on a monster, clear a condition on the monster, add more damage, add 2 tokens to the action tracker, so when they roll again with a failure, you get even more actions.
Mm.
So a lot of interesting things you can spend that on. And there's a section here that talks about, what to do as a DM or cardinal sins of DMing, and one they say is not to spend all your fear. You, you need to spend that fear to balance the adventure. Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. Now, running a campaign, they have down here the adversaries reference. So you have a foe with relentless can activate multiple times during a GM's turn, as long as there are enough action tokens. So that'd be like a solo creature or a big enemy. Slow costs multiple action tokens to activate. So that'd be a big, massive ogre or something like that. Minions, for every X damage a PC deals to the adversary, they also deal 1 hit point to an additional minion within their attack's range. So it might say minion 1 or 2. So you do 6 damage, you kill that minion, and you kill 3 more minions, maybe, for example, if they have 1 hit point each. And I seem to recall we kind of were doing that with that MCDM playtest, and there was some weirdness to that. So we'll have to test that out and definitely play with some minions in the game and see how that goes. Horde is kind of like a swarm, where their damage goes down when their hit points go down. And then group attack. Okay. So they have some sample adversaries. So like we were saying, their adversaries are kind of generic. So a jagged knife bandit, I think, could be things like goblins and kobolds. Beasts are animals. Mercenaries could be like, I don't know, maybe humans and hobgoblins and such. Skeletons, all various sorts of skeletons. Guards could be city guards. So that's the kind. Oh, there's pirates here. So let's look at a pirate captain, or just pirates in general. So these are tier 0 adversaries, and they don't quite have their bookmarks right here. It's sitting under common adversary moves, I think.
It's interesting to see
Tier 0, there we go.
some of the adversaries as sort of categories or play
Yeah,
or generic.
right. Because
And
how
that's
different is a kobold and a goblin, right?
right. How
Yeah,
different is an ogre from other big guys who hit hard?
yeah. And then they also get away from their concern probably of naming nearly humanoid creatures as monsters. So there's that too. They avoid the orcs are evil, all evil problem.
Well, I just advise adversaries. They're not necessarily monsters.
Right. Pirate raiders. So let's see. Pirate captain. Good attack modifier. Looks like it won't be too hard to hurt him, but he has some significant hit points. Difficulty is 14 to hit versus a regular pirate. That's a horde of pirates is what this is.
Wait, this make them walk the plank. Is that some sort of combat maneuver?
Where's that at? Where do you see that?
It's just under motives and
I
tactics.
think that's just, how you could play them.
Oh, okay.
I think. I don't know if it is. It might be a combat maneuver. I haven't seen that yet.
Well, I would imagine it's part of the stack block, but I don't
Yeah.
see it there. So I guess it's more flavor.
So yeah, standard round, he can move, attack with +4 modifier, doing 2d8 damage. On attack against the pirate captain, the result of 16 or below causes the attacker to mark stress. Interesting. Out of the hold, spend 2 fear to summon a pirate raider's horde that turns at far range. This can only be done once per day. So out comes a horde of pirates. This horde of pirates is +1 to attacks, doing d8 damage. That's not a lot. It seems like that'd just be no damage to a character. Powerful on attack against his adversary. Any result 15 or below causes the attacker to mark stress. Creatures per hit point 3. They may deal only d4 instead of their normal damage. There might be something about how big the horde is doing more damage. I'm not sure. I'd have to read that more carefully. Pirate Tough Bruiser. So just a single big pirate doing +1 attack, 2d10 +2 damage. So that's pretty high damage. On attack against them, you mark stress. That'd be tough fighting a bunch of pirates. Stress out real fast. Spend a fear to make a massive fist attack against a target within very close range, so 10 feet away, like with reach. Then you move into melee and deal that damage, and they're thrown back to close range. Huh. Okay, let's look at the highest end ones they have in here. Arch Necromancer's Host. So this is like levels 8 through 10 characters, and the game only goes to, I think, 10th level.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Yeah, so use our high-end monster. Attacking at +6 to and 4d12 +5 magic damage.
Ouch.
Huge levels on its tiers here. A lot of hit points, a lot of stress. Beam of Decay, Countdown, Loop 8. I don't know what that means. I wonder if that's like a recharge type mechanism. Hostile target. This takes down anytime a PC makes an attack roll. Or you could spend fear to take it down. When triggered, target any number of creatures within close range in front of this adversary and anything behind them with far range. Within far range. Reaction roll with strength, 21, or suffer 4d20 magic damage. Half damage on a success.
Some of these mechanics look like they set up some sort of escalation or time pressure to the fight, which leads to excitement.
Your life is mine. Loop 2d6. Activate when Arch Necromancer has marked 6 or more of their hit points. So once they're bloodied, takes down every time a token is placed on the action tracker. So every time the players act, when triggered, deal 2d20 direct magic damage to a target within close range, and clear stress and hit points equal to that. So taking someone else's life onto yours. It's definitely not what I expected. It looks like it can be a lot harsher than I expected. I thought it'd be much more, soft stories and no one gets too hurt, but it looks like it could be much more gruesome if you wanted it to be.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Like mechanics, says Matt. Okay. Anyone else have anything they want to look at? Throw it in chat if you want to see anything. I'm just going to look around here and let's take a look at the characters. So we started looking at this rogue a little bit, but let's say you're making a rogue character. It kind of walks you through the steps to do it. Kind of walks you through getting your character sheet filled out, choices to make.
Things I saw a picture of is as a guide when you're handling your character, there was a way to line up two of the sheets. So there's captions almost for some of these things on your character sheet that are set on a second sheet.
I saw that. I haven't found it yet.
Cool.
I've been looking through the playtest material and I haven't been able to find it yet. But yeah, I saw the same thing and that did look real cool. So you got your play guide, basically a quick reference sheet for the players, kind of going over the things we went over on how to do everything. The quick reference here, advantage and disadvantage, helping, tag team role. Vulnerable means you're going to grant advantage to anyone attacking you. Restrained, can't move. Temporary, when the spell, condition, etc. is temporary, it means the GM can end it by spending fear. So you'll notice that this game is not, what they call it, it's not symmetric for the players and the DM using different mechanics. So that then also engenders how do you do player versus player stuff. So I don't know how temporary things would work on a player versus player. I think everything else would work okay. It seems like it would. But okay, so here's when you're making your character, you're going to pick an ancestry. And so each of these ancestries have some cool art, but they're pretty simple. They have like just one thing they add. So Clank, that's like the equivalent of an auto gnome or something like that. Decide where you're created and choose one experience that reflects your purpose and add one to it. So you get +1 to 1 experience. Ribbit lets you strike with your tongue. So that's pretty cool. A daemon, fearless. When you roll with fear, you may choose to mark a stress instead of the GM gaining fear. So you can keep the fear away from the GM that way. Dread Visage, you have advantage on rolls to intimidate other non-daemon creatures. Giant, gain additional hit point slot at character creation. Any melee weapon you wield has its range increased to very close, so 10 feet. That seems like very strong for a fighter. Dwarf, when you should take physical damage, you may spend 3 hope to only take half the damage instead. Interesting. So that's the characters, and there's a lot of them here.
There's a lot of anthropomorphic
Yeah.
creatures, like the frogs and the
Katari,
cat people.
Galapa, which is the frog person. Bee Goblin. There's goblins there.
Yep.
Furbolg are cow people. I think some Furbolg players might be annoyed by that. But
as somebody who was really annoyed back in the day that RuneQuest allowed you to play ducks, and
yeah.
I thought that was a little too silly for me. I've come around a little bit to the anthropomorphic creatures, but I think I still need to do some adjustment to my mindset.
You can play a fungus. A fungrel is like a myconid. So there's that. Let's see. There's 9. There's like 18 ancestries to pick from. So quite a bit. Whereas human give you a perseverance. When you fail a roll that utilizes one of your experiences, you may spend a hope to re-roll and must take the new result. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And then you have where you were born. So born in the high city, you have advantage on any rolls you make when consorting with nobles. Born on the sea, seaborn, safe harbor. Once per session, when you take a short or long rest, you may take 1 additional downtime action. Once per session.
Yeah, it's cool that you can just pick a couple of options and have them overlap and then create a unique character.
Yeah.
But Tom, here's something that I was tantalized by but didn't see. Was there some sort of card mechanic in the game where you get...
These are all cards, basically. I don't have... I think they'll have like layouts where you can put these cards on a layout, but I haven't found that in the playtest mechanics yet. So basically all these things are cards, and you just grab these cards that you want to use. You can see they have the cut marks for them.
Right.
And yeah, so you have that card, you just throw that card on your character, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of gimmicky because you could also just put this on your character, what the card says.
The cards are reminders, playing
Yeah.
pieces, rather than some sort of deck building resource
right
that you might use.
Yeah. So I don't think your ancestry or your community, or what's the other one here? That's it. I don't think those two really you need a card for because it'll never change. But what will change will be your various character class features. So for example, for a rogue, first you pick what subgroup of rogue you are, be it Nightwalker or Syndicate. And I think that never changes or can change later. I haven't read all the rules, so I don't know for sure. You pick that, and then you're going to pick 2 of the powers. And you can pick 2 Midnight powers, 2 Grace powers, or 1 of each. And so let's look at a sample power, Rain of Blades. Spend 2 hope to conjure throwing blades that strike any enemy close to you. Make a spellcast roll, and all targets that you succeed against take d10 magic damage. So you might know Rain of Blades, and you might know Deaf Deceiver. Spend a hope to take advantage on a roll you make to deceive or trick someone into believing a lie you tell them. And then, for every rest you take, you can switch them. So you'll always have access to these 6, 2 at a time, between rests. And that's first level. And then when you go up in levels, you can choose to add more. So rogue, then you can pick ones from level 2. So you could take Shadowbind, make a spellcast roll against all enemies within very close range. Their shadows temporarily pinned where they are, and they're restrained. So there's that. And if you look at the rogue as they're leveling up, what kind of rate are they adding these? Increase skills, armor slot, major damage threshold, deck card at your level or lower. And increase your severe damage threshold by +2. So I think you get 3 of this every level. I'm not sure if I'm reading that right. If your loadout is full, you may choose a card to swap. Then choose a new domain deck card at your level or lower. So you're getting more cards as you go up. And so basically, each one of these is like a class feature or a spell. And you gain them as you go up.
It's a token representing a choice or a
Yep.
resource.
It's like spell
Yep.
cards in D&D. Instead of having all this listed out on a sheet of paper that you put a checkbox by,
Right.
you have all these
Can we
cards. I'd
take
rather.
a moment to appreciate here? We're in a playtest game and how great some of these art and layouts on these cards look, and some of the
Yeah.
character cards and
They've been working
domain
hard on the art.
cards.
Yeah. And the
Yeah,
layout.
for sure. This is going to be dazzling when it comes out.
I don't know what these symbols mean. If anyone knows, throw it in the chat what the 1 lightning bolt or 2 lightning bolt means. Let's look at a wizard. See what a fireball looks like. So, wizard. Here we go. And fireball. So, being that this only goes up to 10th level, I suspect it might be only a 2nd level power or a 3rd level power. Maybe 3rd. Yep, 3rd. So you could take this card. Oh, and interestingly, a wizard picking a card is like adding multiple spells to their spellbook or to their preparations. So if they pick the card on the right, they could do a levitate or a recant or a ruin circle. And a card on the left, a mystic tether or a fireball. Let's see. Make a spellcasting roll within very far range. Sphere of fire toward them explodes upon impact. Must make a reaction roll. On a failure, they take d8 magic damage. They take half damage rounded up. So that doesn't look like much unless it bypasses armor. Yeah, that's interesting. And it looks like, oh, I don't know if I'd seen anything that looked like a cleric in this game. Looks like the wizard has healing powers.
There is nothing that totally matches a cleric. There was some sort of angel type.
Seraph?
Yeah.
Seraph. Let's look at Seraph.
But in the pitch for why you might want to play a seraph, it emphasized the wings and the ability to fly rather than some sort of healing.
Class. Seraph. Divine fighters and healers appointed by their god.
Okay, healers.
So maybe like a paladin / clerics. Class features paradise. Wing sentinel. So if you look at a guardian has a thing basically like raging, unstoppable. So it's kind of like going into a rage. I put this up on X. I really like this, how simple they made a rogue hiding ability. When you move into a location where no enemies can see you, you're hidden. And you stay hidden until you act or move.
That, my friend, is rules light.
Yeah, that's rules light. Because really the rogue can do that if they're played by a good player. And you have to go through all the minutia of, oh, they found the spot to hide and they roll their hide check, but they never fail it if they're good. And they always find a spot to hide in. So you just simplify it all and says, oh, I'm going to go over here and hide. Now, that I'd assume from the DM side that they're actually trying to hide, not standing in the middle of the room and saying, I'm using my magical power so you can't see me. But yeah, it's super simple. As a rogue, when you're hidden, targets also can't see you. Even if they move into line of sight, you're no longer hidden after you move or attack. Done. Sneak attack. If you have advantage on an attack roll or an ally is in melee with your target, you add a d8 to your damage roll. And you can spend hope before the attack roll, and if it's successful, add a number of d8s equal to the hope spent. So hope and fear, you're going to spend a lot as a character. And every attack you make, you're either gaining a hope or you're giving the DM a fear. So it's going to be pretty dynamic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Very dynamic.
Yeah, there's a lot of roles that are coming in a battle. So that hope and fear is going to be piling up one way or the other.
You'll have to use your DM fiat to say, no, you can't make knowledge checks over and over to build up your hope.
Oh, yeah. Right.
All right. I think I'm going to kind of wrap it up there.
Tom, do you know what their plans are for this
How
going
far
forward?
out? They
Yeah,
say
have they?
2025, right? The game is still in active development. They don't say here, but I think on their website they say 2025 is their goal. But I don't know when in 2025. If I had to bet, I'd say around Gen Con timeframe. So still a year and a half out. Same time as MCDM, right? So this is interesting to see these two big power players coming out with a game next year. D&D trying to come up with a game this year. How much fracturing of the market is there going to be? And will Critical Role start playing Daggerheart in their next season? I think they got to. I don't,
They got to.
unless there's some sort of like contractual reason why they don't. So, yeah, that's it. It looks really promising. I was really surprised. I thought it was going to be a much more softballish, sit around and tell the story, feel good. No, you can get in trouble really fast in this game. And if you watch a Critical Role game, I mean, Matt's always using tokens or minis and maps, and he's playing 5e, so he doesn't kill people very often, but sometimes he does. And that's how the cookie crumbles for them. So,
Right. I'm eager
I'm
to play
interested.
this.
Yeah, look for a playtest right after I finish up. I'm playing right now Source of Victory's adventure, Shrine of the Jaguar Princess, which is amazing. I might want to run it again. It's that good. It's really, his adventures are just so fun. And that's Shadow Dark, which never thought of running a campaign in Shadow Dark. I feel like I like it for one shots. I might have to give it a campaign try sometime, but I still like D&D, I think, mostly for that. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for watching.
Bye, folks.